Welcome to Lesson 7 in Through the New Testament in Ancient Greek for Absolute Beginners. My name is Helene Estée, and I'm your guide as we read through the New Testament in its original, beautiful language, the language of ancient Greece, which coincidentally was called Hellenistai. Because each lesson will build on previous lessons, be sure to start with Lesson 1. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, today we're going to be reading through Matthew 4, verses 12 through 25, which is when Jesus began his ministry, called his first disciples, and healed many people. And we're going to spend this lesson on review, so we get a really good, or at least a much better understanding of personal pronouns, articles, conjunctions, adjectives, adverbs, and prepositions. All right, let's start with Matthew chapter 4, verses 12, 13, 14, and 15. Ακούσαστε ότι Ιωάννης παραδόθη ανεκόρησεν εις την Γαλιλαίαν, καὶ κατ' λοιπόν την Ναζαρά ἐλθόν κατώκησεν εις Καφαρναούμ, την παραθαλασσίαν εν χωρίοις Ζαμπουλών, καὶ Νεφθαλείμ. Χίνα πληρωθει τα ρέθεν δια Ισαΐου του προφήτου λέγοντας, γε Ζαμπουλών καὶ γε Νεφθαλείμ, χάδαν θαλάσσες, πέραν του Ιορδάνου, Γαλιλαία των εθνών. All right, so just a reminder of our parts of speech. I made these color codes just so we could point them out more easily and they'll draw your eye. We have adverbs in violet for verb, adverb. Article is in red for are, article. Conjunctions are coral, nouns are navy blue, prepositions are purple, adjectives are jade, and personal pronouns, I have a new color. I'm calling it pretty pink for personal pronouns. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at a few things. In this case, it's coral, so we know these are conjunctions. We have a few conjunctions in the verses we just read. They should be familiar to you, at least de and kai. Just want to remind you, remember de can mean now, but, and, then. Quite a few different uses for de. It's kind of a little particle that they sprinkled everywhere just to indicate kind of keeping the story going. And it is a postpositive. That means it always goes after the first word in the sentence, never at the beginning. And then we have kai. I'll just skip over to kai, which is our other very common conjunction, which is just the same as and. Pretty much always translated and. I may be wrong, but hati here. Hati means that. So having heard that John had been delivered up, basically that he had been arrested, this hati is also very common. And then down here we have hina. And I've mentioned before that hina is very common when you're talking about purpose. For example, so that it might be fulfilled what Isaiah the prophet said. So that, or so that. And that's always going to be followed by our subjunctive tense for verbs. Don't worry if you don't know what that means, but we're going to talk about subjunctive in the future. But something that is a purpose of what something happened. So basically all of this happened so that the prophet Isaiah could be fulfilled. All right, so going on to the next slide, I'm going to point out our prepositions, which are in purple. Common ones are ace. Remember, ace means into, like ace in the hole. And it's always followed, for the most part, it's followed by the accusative. So I always remember that ace in English would be ACE, so that's accusative. So into the Galilee, into the Galilee. Here again, into Capernaum. They're actually talking about being at Capernaum here. It's, different translations may be more appropriate for different types of places. So it can be into, at, and there's other ways you can translate ace. It's generally followed by accusative though. Now we have en, which is also very common and quite easy to remember that means in. And it's generally followed by the dative. Like if you're in a relationship with someone, you go on a date. That's how I remember it. So dative will be following en. Now, dia actually will have several different meanings depending on the case that it's following. So here it's followed by genitive. So that means by or through. So through Isaiah. You might also say by, a book by someone. So in that case, it's followed by the genitive. It comes from that person. That's how I remember it. Genitive is usually something out of or from. And then here we have pέραν. I don't think we've covered pέραν before, but that means beyond the Jordan, and it is followed by the genitive. All right, so beyond the Jordan is in genitive. All right, our next thing we want to talk about are our articles. And I have this little handy chart here to remember how we organize. You don't have to memorize this, but of course, it really helps just to kind of keep things in order for me to see that every once in a while. All right, so tain. Tain is pretty easy because when you have the eta followed by the nu, it's always going to be feminine accusative. All right, so tain Galilean. So into, remember ace goes with the accusative. So into the Galilee, the region of Galilee is feminine. And generally regions and towns are feminine. Our exception that we've seen is Jerusalem, which is plural and neuter. All right, so then we can have tain again with Nazareth is Nazareth. So again, it's they left. So when you leave someplace, that's your direct object. That's why that's accusative. And then tain again, we have the seaside. All right, so the seaside in the region of Zebulun. Now here, this is actually an adjective. We'll talk about it next, but it's used as a noun. So that's called substantive. Don't worry about the terms, but a substantive adjective is used as a noun. So by the seaside. Seaside here is feminine because sea is feminine, and we'll talk about that when we get to adjectives and nouns. Now we have ta. Now remember, ta can either be singular neuter nominative or singular neuter accusative. And in this case, it's nominative. So it might be fulfilled. Basically the thing that is spoken by. This is a participle. We won't talk about participles quite yet, but ta ἐκεῖθεν, and that would be neuter. So we know that this is neuter, and it's nominative because it's the subject. The subject, the having been spoken by Isaiah, might be fulfilled. So the subject of that clause there. And then the prophet. So by Isaiah. So because it's by the prophet, it's genitive. And then this describes Isaiah. So it's also going to be genitive. And then we have another genitive, to, and that's beyond the Jordan. So here we have a genitive because it follows pέραν. And then ton ethnon. That is Galilee of the Gentiles. Ethnon is basically, that's where we get ethnicity, for example. That's basically the peoples, the other peoples besides the Jews. All right, so of the Gentiles. And we have ton. We haven't seen that in a while, but remember it's the same genitive, plural, same masculine, feminine, and neuter. So it's pretty easy to remember. But this is actually neuter. So the Gentiles is neuter, so it's going to be neuter, but it's the same as masculine and feminine. All right, let's go on to our next slide. Here, this is where it was going to talk about thalasses and parαθαλασσίαν. I have a little chart to help us. First of all, in the New Testament, we only have this in the singular. We don't have seas. We have something else to indicate like multiple groups of bodies of water probably. But in the New Testament, we only have the singular versions. So this is thalassa, thalasses. Notice how this accent changes a little bit when you add the ace there. Thalasse, and we have our iota subscript to indicate dative, and then pᾶσαν, pᾶσαν. So here we have thalasses, and that is your genitive, all right? Because it's the way of the sea. Hadan thalasses, of the sea, belonging to the sea. It's genitive. All right, now this is an interesting adjective here. We took this, they took this back in ancient Greece. They took παρά, which means by, and then they added it to the word for sea, and it became an adjective meaning by the sea, so on the seaside. So I wanted to show you one other way to remember this guy. Now I couldn't find, this is really the only occurrence in the entire New Testament of this adjective. So I'm going to use another similar adjective, which is much more common. It's dikaios, and dikaios means righteous or good. And this comes from, remember when in Matthew 1, it says that Joseph was a righteous man. So he didn't want to hurt Mary. He wanted to secretly divorce her. So he was being righteous in that sense. So this is the word here. So in this case, we are feminine accusative. So right here. so dikaion, parαθαλασσίαν. All right, let's move on. I don't want to spend too much time. Okay, time to read again, Matthew 4:16 and 17. Halaos ha kathemenos en skatia, phos aiden μέγα, kai tois kathemenois en pora, kai skia thanatu, phos anetelen autois, apa tate erxato ha Jesus kerusein kai legein, metanoiete ἐκεῖθεν gar he basileia ton uranon. All right, so let's go ahead and check some things out on this. Here are our articles and my little handy dandy way of remembering all of the different parts, the various forms. We have ha is nominative masculine singular. Ha again. Now this is an interesting use of the article. I'm just going to point it out real quick. But usually when something modifies a noun, you would repeat this article if it follows. So ha, laos, ha, kathemenos. And then we have tois, to those. So that's over here. And in this case, it's dative masculine plural. The same form as for the neuter, but in this case, it's to those, to the people. So in general, people would be masculine because it's a mixture of male and female. And then here, ha again. And notice how the article is used with proper names like Jesus. So just to make sure it's this Jesus, the Jesus. And then we have he basileia, which is our feminine nominative singular. And then of the heavens, ton uranon. So uranon is genitive masculine plural. So you have genitive masculine plural ton. All right, let's go ahead and talk about our prepositions here. We have en. We've already seen en skatia, in the darkness. So dative, feminine singular. And a lot of times you won't have the article with this. So en skatia is basically in the darkness or in darkness. En kora means in the land. So when you have en, remember it's dative afterwards. So that's why you have kora with the iota subscript. And then apa. Apa is from, and it's followed by, it's usually followed by genitive, but in this case, from that time, it's just an adverb, so it doesn't change, thank goodness. Tate, so apa, from. All right, next let's look at a few. We're going to put these two together. We have tate, again, as an adverb, and then our personal pronouns, which we covered in the last lesson. So a light has dawned on them. On them is like to them or for them. Αὐτός, αὐτός. So remember with en, on, you usually do the dative. So that's kind of the same type of thing here. You don't have to have en necessarily. In fact, a lot of times they just take the en out and just have this the personal pronoun. So αὐτός is down here. Oh, it's actually masculine because it's on them, a group of people, which is masculine and feminine mixture, so it's masculine. And then the other thing I want to point out is this conjunction, gar, for the kingdom of the heavens has drawn near. It's basically is coming near. So this is basically, remember, gar means for or because or type of thing. All right, let's go ahead and read Matthew 4, verses 18 and 19. Peritatonde parā ten thalasan, tes Galileias, ēden dua adelphus, Simona tan legamenon Petran, kai Andrean tan adelphou autou, balantas amphiblestron eis ten thalasan, esan gar alies, kai lege autois dute ォπισω mu, kai poieso humas ahalies anthropon. All right, so the first things I want to point out here are our articles. And again, let's have our little handy dandy chart. So again, tein, thalasan, is beside the sea. So here, parā is followed by the accusative. So we have tein. Remember, tein is unique. It's only going to be feminine accusative singular. of Galilee. This is a region that's feminine. So we have tais. And again, that one's unique too. It's always genitive, feminine, singular. Ton is accusative, masculine, singular. Always. That's the only one that's ton, because our neuter is going to be the same as the nominative. So ton, legomenon. And then ton, adelphon. So adelphon is Andrew the brother. So he saw, these are direct objects of Jesus seeing. So they're in the accusative. All right, and then tain, thalassen, is into the sea. So again, we have the sea. This is following a, so it's accusative. Now let's point out our personal pronouns. We have of him, his brother, so αὐτού. And then we have αὐτός, he says to them. So it's going to be αὐτός, which is dative, plural, masculine. And then after me, ωπισω is a preposition followed by the genitive. So let me show you this guy. We have our me, by me, of me is mu. And then kai poieso humas, I will make you. So this is an accusative because they're the object of make. And so you, plural, humas. All right, just a few more things to point out here. Παρά is beside, followed by the accusative, beside the sea. Dua is to, that's an adjective. Ace, into the sea. We have accusative following ace. Gar, for they were fishermen. So that's why they were casting the net, because they were fishermen. And then finally after, ωπισω, mu. So ωπισω is followed by the genitive. I just wanted to point out that preposition. All right, let's go ahead and read Matthew 4:20 through 22. Hoide eŭθέως, ἀφέντες τα δίκτυα, ἐκαλούθησαν αὐτό, kai probas ἐκεῖθεν, eden ἀλλούς dua adelphus, Jacoban tan tu Zebedaiu, kai Ioannein tan adelphon αὐτού, ento ploio μετὰ Zebedaiu tu patras αὐτόν, καταρτίζαντας τα δίκτυα αὐτών, kai ἐκάλεσεν αὐτούς, hoide eŭθέως ἀφέντες τα ploion kai tan patera αὐτόν, ἐκαλούθησαν αὐτό. All right, so first let's point out our articles. I won't spend too much time on this, but just a little reminder of our little article chart. Hoi, ta, because dictua, nets, is neuter, plural. Jacoban, tan, the son of Zebedee, is two. So the son modifies James, which is accusative, and two is modifying Zebulon. Then we have tan again, accusative, masculine, singular. To, which could be either masculine or neuter. In this case, it's neuter because it's modifying the boat, ploio, which is neuter. And then we have tu, which is genitive, masculine, singular. Could also be neuter, masculine, singular. But in this case, it's modifying the father, which is a masculine noun. And then ta is plural, again, neuter. Could be either nominative or accusative. In this case, they're mending the net, so that's accusative. That's the object. Hoi is masculine, plural. And then in this case, it's just they. Basically, it's not the men. It's just hoide, eŭθέως. So they basically, you can use the article just for like a they, in place of aŭtoi, by the way. And then ta, ploion, again, we have accusative, neuter, singular. So that's the same as the nominative, modifying boat. And then their father. They left their father. So he is in the direct object, accusative. All right, so pointing out here all of the personal pronouns. And here's our little cheat sheet. We have αὐτό here. αὐτού could be either masculine or neuter. In this case, it's masculine because it's modifying brother, or actually it's modifying John, John's brother, his brother. And then patras auton, in this case, is there. So we have it here. Could be masculine, feminine, or neuter. But in this case, it's masculine because it's modifying the brothers. And then dictua auton, again, their nets. So that's there. Autus, he called them. So here we have autus. That's always going to be accusative plural masculine. Autus, them. It is the direct object of called. And then down here, of them again, auton, and then they followed him. Now after the verb followed, you're going to use dative, basically using a dative kind of idea relationship. And then the last two things I want to point out here are eўθέως, immediately, ἐκεῖθεν. I don't think we've done ἐκεῖθεν yet. That means from there, ἐκεῖθεν, another adverb. And then eւθέως again, immediately. And then ӓλλους, others. This is a new adjective that's pretty common. Ӓλλους is the accusative masculine plural. You can tell by the us there. And then doua is to again. And then a couple of prepositions I wanted to point out. En, followed by dative, as we know. And then metā is with. Metā zebedaiu. With is followed by the genitive here. In this case, when you're talking about metā with somebody, it's genitive. There are other meanings that metā has when it's followed by a different case. We'll talk about that in the future. All right, and now we have Matthew 4:23. Let's go ahead and read. Kai periegen en hale te Galilaia didaskon en tais synagogais auton. Kai keruson ta euangelion tes basileas kai therapion pᾶσαν nasan kai pᾶσαν malakian en to lao. Let's point out a few things here. We have a few prepositions we've seen before, en, and en. And this is a good time to point out that sometimes en can mean throughout. So followed by the dative, throughout. Here it means in the synagogue. You would never say throughout the synagogue. So I mean, it really depends on what you're talking about, what's following it. Again, followed by the dative. And then here, among. You could say in the people, but in English it makes more sense to say among the people. All right, and then of them, auton. We've talked about that before. We have auton here, and this is genitive masculine, third person plural. And then finally, I really want to point out this, this term here, euangelion. So this is the first time in the New Testament you see the word gospel. So angelion is message, and eu is good. So it's good message, good news, and it is neuter. So here it is proclaiming the gospel. So here it's going to end with a new. So it's euangelios, but it's euangelion in the accusative. So just love that word. And moving on, we have hale. Now hale is a very common word, similar to passa. I'm going to put up hale first. Now I only put the forms that show up in the New Testament. So the dashes just means that there's no occurrence of that form in the New Testament. So I'm just not going to even show it. All right, so hale is right here. It is the feminine dative singular. So you can see, say, dative feminine singular, adjective, all of Galilee, the whole of Galilee. And this is why it's talking about, well, in this case, it's throughout, so it has to be dative. Dative feminine singular, dative feminine singular, dative feminine singular. So all of Galilee. And then down here, this has a very similar meaning. In this case, it's more of an every. But you can also use this form for the whole, but it's almost interchangeable with hale or halas. So passa, pan. We have pᾶσαν, which is feminine accusative singular, or accusative feminine singular as they have it here. So every disease, every sickness, and both disease and sickness are feminine singular. All right, and then just pointing out a few more of these articles. The Galilee, in this case, dative, because it's throughout. And then in the synagogues is also going to be dative, tais synagogais. And then ta euangelion is neuter. And then of the kingdom, tes basileas, of the kingdom is genitive, and basileas is feminine. So you have genitive, femininum, singular. And then among the people, to lao. And that's dative masculine singular to match masculine lao and the fact that it's in or among the people. All right, these are our last verses for this lesson. Let's go ahead and read Matthew 4, verses 24 and 25. Kai ἐκεῖθεν he akae aŭtou eis halein ten surian kai pros egnekan aŭto pantas tous kakῶs ἐκεῖθεν poikilais nasois kai basanois sunekamenus kai daimonisamenus kai seleniasamenus kai paralyticus kai ἐθεράπιουσεν αὐτούς kai ἐκαλούθεσαν αὐτό ἄλλοι πάλοι απά τες Γαλιλαίας kai Decapaleos kai Hierasolymon kai Judæas kai pέραν του Jordanu. All right, notice how many kais we have in this one. Just a few really quick remarks here. The news is, of course, we have our feminine nominative singular, nominative feminine singular, of him. So I'm going to put these together so you can see we have very similar forms when it's the article versus when it's the personal pronoun. So, for example, αὐτού here, of him, is similar to. All right, so one is the article, the Jordan, and one is the personal pronoun, his or of him. Then we have ten Surian, all of Syria. And then we have αὐτό, which is to him. They brought to him, to Jesus, all of the people that were sick, right? Tous, the, and then here we have sick, the sick, and so forth. Here we have them, meaning accusative. He healed them. That's going to be αὐτούς, which is similar. Page. And then αὐτό is they followed him. Remember, after followed, it's like followed with him or along with him. And then tes Galileas, genitive feminine singular, after apá, and to Jordanu, so of beyond the Jordan. And then lastly, we have some prepositions, eis, so into, apá, from, that's going to be genitive, like out of, so that would be a genitive kind of idea. And then beyond the Jordan is also a genitive idea, beyond the Jordan, so on the other side of, basically. And then κακῶς, this is an adverb, which means sickly. So basically, they're using an adverb here for a noun, which is similar to using adjective as a noun, a substantive use of an adverb. And then we have halein, all, pantas, and a new adjective here is poikilais. Poikilais, that means various. And then down here we have paralytics, paralyticus. Paralyticus is an adjective used as a noun, so that's a substantive use of the adjective. Paloi, great. Now just a few little reminders. We have halos, here in this case it's halein, which is accusative feminine singular. And then another one we learned in, I believe it was the last lesson, about polis. This is very common. So here it's paloi, paloi. Many, great, and that's going to be our nominative masculine plural. So that does it for lesson 7. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour through the ancient Greek of the New Testament, and I look forward to seeing you next time.